So welcome to Start Strong 2021. This is the final session and workshop of the day, and I'm so excited to introduce you to Greg Sherwin. He is the Director of Operations for an international nonprofit called Mission Life, which helps children around the world with, and he's going to talk a lot more eloquently about this than I am, but because I don't like to use that term, impoverished communities. It's, I don't know what kind of language to use, but, maybe children who don't have the same resources as other communities. And so finding ways to give them those resources. But I think the other piece which really resonated with me when he and I were talking was your personal story of finding this and how it enriched your life. And as I was mentioning in our last session, we were talking about moving into this age of Aquarius over the next 200 years. And how it's about returning back to that collective consciousness, making sure everybody has some versus just a few people. And so I feel like it was a great segue into what he's going to be talking about tonight. So thanks for being here. If you have questions, put that in the chat in Zoom or share that in Facebook. And just a reminder that this is being recorded. It could show up on websites or YouTube. So if you don't want to be recorded, just turn off your audio and your video. And Greg, I will hand everything over to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And you should be a co-host now.
You're now a co-host. Perfect. All right, I will share here. I do presenter mode. Let me just do this real quick. Oh, perfect. All right, so let me know if you see that. Great.
Yes, I do.
Okay, good. So thank you guys for jumping on today. This is an exciting opportunity that I had to be able to share a story with you all and engage you towards the end and have some conversation. So please, in the chat on Facebook or in Zoom here, I'd love to hear your conversations and bits and information about our topics today. And we'll answer some questions towards the end and even ask a few questions as well. So to get into, let me know if I have to do that work too, Shae, get missions.
Nope, I'm here for you.
Oh, cool.
Keep rolling.
All right, cool. So before I jump in, I wanted to just share this title and I'll break down some of these different terms too. So in our life, we may be looking and seeking and feeling that there's more. There's more to our days, there's more to our life, there's more to our purpose. And I'm going to share with you today a story that I have in my life and that I've experienced and finding spirituality through philanthropy. And we're going to define what those things are too, to be on the same page as we go forward. So to start, I just want to do a quick introduction. Thank you, Shae. You did a great job in terms of who we are and what we do. And just kind of to reiterate, my name is Greg Sherwin. I'm a director of operations at Mission Life, which is a child sponsorship 501c3 nonprofit. There are many organizations that are like it globally. Ours is quite unique in some of the ways that we operate, but I'll get into that a little bit later. But I'm also a founder of a website design and social media management company. I'm a husband of a high school sweetheart, Crystal, who we've known going on almost 15 years. Shae, it's pretty incredible. I'm a father with a 1-year-old son, Noah, as well. So that's been an adventure this year among the times of COVID to have a son and be home and be able to be with him too. So it's been quite the blessing this year. So as we get into it, I'm going to set some expectations. Hopefully I'll be able to share with you some history of my story, share with you a turning point that occurred for me, ask some questions that hopefully will be thought-provoking for you in your life, and hopefully also have some fun. I know this is live or live streaming, so I'd love to engage with you as you're tuning in today too. So to get started with a few definitions, I want to kick off with the first one in the title of this presentation, which is spirituality. And I took from two credible sources, Wikipedia and Oxford Dictionary, Spirituality is the shorthand term used in Western society to talk about a person's relationship with God. And in Oxford, it defines it as the quality of being concerned with human spirit or soul as opposed to material or physical things. And the second term to define before we jump into things is philanthropy. Philanthropy consists of private initiatives for the public good, focusing on the quality of life. It contrasts with business initiatives, which are private initiatives for private good, focusing on material gain. And on the Oxford definition, it states that the desire to promote welfare of others, expressed especially by the generous donation of money to good causes. And lastly, to note philanthropy, which is maybe a new fact for some of you, which it was for me, philanthropy is different from charity. Though there is some overlap, charity actually aims to relieve the pain of a particular social problem, whereas philanthropy attempts to address the root cause of the problem. Again, super credible source, Wikipedia. So these are just some places to start from for tonight, and to hopefully see through this story of mine where these things fit in, and how I've found um, purpose as well along the way in fullness. And so my story, I'm going to give you lots of the pieces here along the way, and then I'll also share with you how they tie together in a moment that I had a turning point where I saw all of these pieces get put together. And it was quite the experience. So growing up, I want to rewind the clocks a little bit here. 2008, 2006, 7, somewhere back there as well. I grew up with a taste of serving. I learned through experiences with my family, through church, projects that they would take on and volunteer at, or mission trips, for example, where we would actually go and build a church, plant a church in a certain location. We would build houses or bunk houses, if you will, for missionary teams to go and support different struggling communities. So they have a place to go and stay while they're doing work, and other various community projects as well. And that those experiences as a youth was really impactful in my life, and a starting point for really jumping off to really what I wanted to do in a bigger scale later in my life. And so some of the lessons I learned, I'm going to share during pieces of these puzzles, different lessons that I learned that led to where I am today. And so a few lessons from then that I've realized is, growing up as a youth, summer vacations after school, like you want to go places and have some fun. And I took a lot of vacations, went different places, and was blessed to be able to do that and travel to see family within the U.S. and take road trips. But no trip stood out as impactful as the mission trips that I experienced as a youth, whether it was a week away in Maine or various places. Those trips actually created a lasting impact in how I saw life. Hey, team. And so from there, it inspired me to want to do something great with my hands and create and impact communities. And I thought for me, the best way to do it was going to be through design. I loved the idea of architecture and culture and history. And I found that, and through my studies, that architecture was a way to connect with communities through a physical environment. And I had this dream, this aspiration to make an impact, not just here, but globally. Like, how can I impact community in different place and create a place that's safe, or a place that can improve someone's life? And so I ended up embarking. I went down to Wentworth Institute in Boston, Mass, and graduated with a bachelor's degree, and where I studied architecture for 4 years. And during that time, I had the pleasure also to actually study abroad in France, which was such a cool experience, and to live there for 4 months and be dropped into a new place, new environment, new language. Did not know French. I studied Spanish in high school, so that was fun. And the 1 week that we actually got to vacation over to Spain, I had forgot all my Spanish at that point, and I was only learning French, so it didn't work out either way. But the experience there opened my eyes to a global platform. I would never left the US except for one vacation I took to a tropical island. And, that's super contained in terms of the experience. And so going abroad and being in this new place was just life changing in itself too. And so I ended up working. I graduated, worked at a local firm for 7 years actually, from full time doing architecture design work, and slowly actually moved to part time. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about that. But during that experience of living in this space of architecture, I learned a few lessons here too. And one of them is this desire to travel and support global communities. So whether it was through architecture or whatever I wanted to be, I felt like my one of my purposes drive was to reach further than just my hometown and where I am. And so I started with design and architecture, but during my career, because of the nature of the work that we were doing in that place of business, I kind of started to feel like my excitement around the work that I was doing was kind of being sapped out. I just was kind of just feeling like it wasn't purposeful. It was commercial driven. We were putting up big apartment buildings, and it was very transactional. And to me, I was losing some of that drive about that, why I started that career. And so I started to see that there was opportunity to actually move into this growing company, and they had some opportunities to move out of what I was currently doing and move into some marketing support. It was a wide open opportunity at the organization. And I said, hey, why don't I kind of dabble into this? I started to like what I was doing. It was a little bit more creative, it was a little more human oriented. And I started to dabble into that, actually started to create their channels for social media and take on more responsibilities, and eventually moved from what I got my degree in, was architecture, and moved to a completely different part of the organization and started doing marketing support and business development support for this firm, which totally changes my perspective of what I, was looking for. And at the same point, for those of you who have graduated, started a career, or left that career, you also kind of feel a bit of a void. You feel like um, you're paying now for this amazingly expensive and luxurious degree that it's not maybe serving you the way you thought it was going to. And so I also had part of that void, even during this decision making of moving into a different career partially. So to stack some things up, and I'm going to give you a small picture here of what this looked like. I started college, and during that same time in college and in this full-time career, I actually started an online e-commerce business um, while I was working full-time, and then after graduation too. And I learned some great things during that experience. I started to set these goals, aspirational goals for career and for monetary things, material things, how I wanted to grow my life and my lifestyle. And I opened my vision to something bigger than just a small scale career and just something that was focused on myself and my own home. It was bigger than me, and there's nothing wrong with having these aspirations. However, for me, during those years of building this part-time endeavor, I was always challenged with discovering why I needed this lifestyle. What was the purpose? Like I liked the idea of it, but it didn't provide a drive to me. I still felt like there was more that I needed to fill in before I would actually have the right drive to achieve goals that I had set out for myself. And so I always kind of got close to a goal and then just didn't feel like I had the drive to push through. Um, so lessons during this time, there were many along the way, but some of the bigger ones that I can note was I learned about organizational management, public speaking during this opportunity, actually. So I went to school for architecture, but kind of sub-studied, I think, through this experience, entrepreneurship. And I got to speak in front of different scales of crowds. I got to be an MC for an event of 300 people. I got to speak and lead a local networking group, and some evenings it would be 100 people in a room, and I got to lead and drive that event, which was just a great experience for me in my young 20s. I also learned about building culture within a team, sales, leadership, systems, how to put systems in place so that way your growth can happen and you're not in the way. You can have other things to help you along the way too. And most importantly for me, I got to learn during this moment in my life how to care about others' goals and how to care about moving people closer to where they want to go. And that was fascinating to me. I love that idea. And during this time, and I'm going to show you how it all stacks up. It sounds like I was doing a lot of different things, and I was. During this time, that venture actually led to me discovering that I could create my own business, self-branded, because when you start to go network and do a business, you need to kind of have your own establishment, if you will, to build credibility. And I decided to kind of go out on a limb, start my own business, take what I was learning from marketing, social media, website design, and actually start an LLC, which is a big leap for somebody who was an employee mindset for a long time. And so I took a leap of faith. And what I found through doing this and launching this business that I still own today, consulting business, is it actually bridged the gap that I felt that I had all this time. It was this bridge to get me to actually where God was leading me this entire way. And so during this experience in my life, I realized that I was establishing new relationships. This opportunity to be a business owner, come into the community, and meet new people and start to build relationships with those who I would never have even communicated with previously. If I stayed in my office doing design work behind a computer, I would have never had the opportunity to engage with people in the community. And so I've had the honors over the past 5 years now, of building websites for local businesses, supporting several of them with social media management, marketing needs. I'm going to share with you. This is getting to the point of this turning point here soon. Um, that lessons that I learned through this experience was really opening up to a whole new group of people that I would have never met before. Um, Also building upon some skills that I had previously, learning about accounting, legal, business management for yourself, right? How to do all those things, manage your business, and also invest in it and everything. And for me, I was starting to create actually a new lifestyle because it was a business that I actually could run from my home remotely. I was the boss, and that was what was really inspiring to me, is that it was something that I could control, and I can control the hours. In a time of your life where you start to, for us, have family goals, not being structured around a clock and having to time into a location, a physical place, was really important to us. And so there was many reasons back then to why I believed I was starting this thing. But the actual reason to why these endeavors panned out was for something completely different. And I'm excited to share with you guys that in a minute. So in this snapshot of my life, I was newly married, living at my parents' home with my wife, or engaged to be. I was working a full-time job in the architecture career firm that I started with, running a part-time consulting business that I had just launched, and also still managing a part-time internet sales business. And for me, with all those things, I still felt that something was missing. There was something. If you looked at my days were packed, but for me, there was still something inside. Even when I was exhausted at the end of the day and driving towards all these amazing things, there was something to me that was still void in my life. And or just as all these things were stacked up, we, my wife and I, got invited to an opportunity to serve at our local church. We were invited to. We weren't sure if we could stack it into our schedule anymore. But what we heard was there was an opportunity to serve as youth directors for a youth group of some youth of this church, that there was no youth program right now. There was a big gap of the past couple of years. Nobody was directing the group. And we said, after some praying and some thoughtful discussions, we said, yes, this is something we should do. We can see that it'll make an impact. We don't know. We've never done it. We have barely built our own foundation of faith, aside from attending church and such occasionally, up until then. And so we just knew this felt like the right thing to do, that we were being led to do this. And so some of these pictures on the screen, 2017, there's this part of our youth group. We were serving in here, actually in Manchester, New Hampshire, an organization called Food for Children. We got to serve food to the community, those who were impoverished in the area. And every Saturday morning, rain or shine, 20 degrees, snowing, it doesn't matter. They serve food to that community. And we got to bring the kids along for that. And what an experience that was. In the top right-hand corner, a buddy of mine, Josh, who you will see later in this presentation too, with our youth group, as you saw earlier, years ago, I went on mission trips, and actually we had the opportunity to bring our youth group and lead them onto a mission trip experience similar to what I experienced years ago. And that was the most incredible thing ever, to actually lead one and bring youth through an experience that I got to have years ago. And just before the trip was about to take place, we were short on chaperones, and the trip wouldn't actually occur if we brought one more chaperone. So we needed to find somebody. And I just picked up the phone and I said, you know what? Josh was a contractor. He kind of had this kind of nimble life and didn't have this set schedule. And I was like, I'm going to call Josh. Maybe he'll just want to come. He's always up for an adventure. I called Josh. He said, yep, I'll drop everything. You let me know when and where to be, and I'll go with you. And luckily he did, because not only did it change a lot of the kids' life on that trip, I know it made a significant impact in Josh's life too, and something we still talk about today. And eventually led to an opportunity to serve with some amazing people too. But most importantly, through this experience that we crammed into our schedule, we barely had time to do this thing, but God made it work no matter what. We had this renewed spirit through this experience, and it was incredible. And at the peak of all of that, we decided we had to press pause and we had to take a breath. We had a baby on the way. And we had been part of the youth group, running part-time businesses, running full-time career, now 3 years basically straight with all those things stacked up. And I said, we got to press pause. We have a family coming. We decided to step down from that youth group experience and pass the baton. We had hoped that somebody would take it on at that point from us. And we just knew that we needed some time to breathe. What I found in that time of breath, and it was one of those things, Shae, just like in your email, it was a breath. And that was all he gave me, was a breath. And God came right back with a lunch-in meeting with a client who had been working with already for 2 years and said, hey, let's have lunch. I have something I want to run by you. Just after we closed the door on something, a new door opened. And I'll share with you all a clip right here. See if we can hear this clip. Let's see. Yeah, so I decided, I was having lunch with our friends, and they just came back from a mission trip, and all Jill could talk about during lunch was about this mission and mission life, and how she just came back from this amazing trip in Colombia. And I was just, just locked in terms of her story, what she was talking about. And my wife she could tell that I was excited about it. And she mentioned to me, she mentioned during the lunch, she's like, this is something you've been talking about doing for a long time, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't remember saying some of this stuff, but she's like, yeah, like when we were in high school, you wanted to go to architecture school and then, go out on a mission and affect change and travel the world. And I said, well, I don't remember saying that, but sounds good. Sounds like me. And during conversation, Jill had mentioned that there was a need for, marketing support. So we were going to connect and talk more about that with the nonprofit. And then also that there's an opportunity to go on a mission trip with them. And at the time, my wife and I just got pregnant, and nobody around us had known yet. And so I was thinking back in my mind, like, well, timing on this trip is at a point where you're going to be 7 months pregnant. I'm like, do you really think you want this to happen? So needless to say, after we left and finished lunch, I asked her in the car ride 2 minutes later, and I said, hey, you think it's something that I should do? And she said, yeah, this is something you've been talking about for a long time. And I said, okay, then let's go. And then we're going to do it. Please hold. And so we did it. We started on a journey of actually volunteering. I got hired actually as a consultant originally, and did marketing work for the organization Mission Life. Came on, as you do marketing work, you just get to know everything about the organization. And so I just started to fall in love with their mission, what they do, what they stand for. At the same time, we started trip training. So you'd meet every month or every few weeks to actually embark and prepare for your mission trip. And so I was doing both. I was supporting the organization, learning all about it, diving full in with our support, and at the same time preparing to go on this trip that following fall. And we got down there in the fall. My wife was 7 months pregnant, as you just heard in the video, and she was just a huge support system to allow this to happen. I went down with a group of about 8 people. For many of us, it was our first time down there as well. Only half the group spoke Spanish or less than that, and so it was, it was super fun. And in the bottom left, you'll see in that picture, I'm all the way to the left, and the lady next to me in the red is actually Jill. That's who I had lunch with 6 months previous to that. And it was a great friend of ours that we had built as a relationship through as a client. His wife, Jill, invited us and just came back from a trip and was just blown away by the experience. And she actually came on to become a trip leader to organize new trips back to Colombia, and said, "Hey, you got to come with me." And I said, "Okay." We got down there and it was a blast. And the bottom right, you'll see that's my buddy Josh again, said yes to another adventure in his life, and thought we were going to be doing some construction work when we got down there, which was my hook to get him there. Um, Needless to say, we probably did 1 day of construction, and for that, it was him lifting bags of gravel up this massive street, and they were just excavating earth, to be honest. It was not a whole lot of construction to do, and 90% of our time of serving wasn't construction based like our trip was in Maine. It was actually hanging out with kids, children, at the center. And that was totally different for Josh, but he was such an adaptive person that I knew no matter what we went through on this trip, he would succeed in it too. In the top right, what I didn't know at the time, and when we got down there, the organization down there, Forma Vida, is partnered with Mission Life, and they work together. And they are the child center that actually provides an after-school program for children to come to a safe place after school, get tutoring. They get a hot meal, which in some cases could be their only hot meal of the day. They get mentorship. There's all sorts of spiritual support. There's activity, there's games. It's a safe place for them to go after the end of the day. And to be honest, a lot of them will come 2:30 as the day finishes at school, and then won't even leave till 7 p.m. And they walk home by themselves to their house without somebody walking them, home as a guardian or anything like that in this quite poor community. And being in and out of that every single day is our experience. One of the days, the founder that you see here in the white, they're working on expansion of the project. So they eventually want to see this after school program become a full day Christian school 5 days a week, and expand it out from 100 children to 500 children to support their community. And so what they're working on is actually expanding their operations to have a multi-purpose field and retail and a bakery and some classrooms, and actually more spaces for missionaries to come and stay, in this amazing sportsplex for kids to play soccer and other sports. And that's what they were looking at. They're planning this out. And I was standing there, that's me in the black baseball cap. And I'm standing there in this moment in the middle of this week. And it just dawned on me that everything that I had been working towards the past several years, between architecture, consulting, starting my own business, trying to go global, and all of these things, it just was sitting there right in front of me. I used to build stick built models like that in college. Like everything was just right there. And it was so amazing to be having a conversation and sitting in exactly where he wanted me to be. And through those experiences, something entirely new was being formed. And that's the picture with Tatiana, the little girl on my back right there. That was being created through this experience. And I'll share with you a little bit about that too. Let's see. And so in that video, you got to see I had a chance to meet and connect with many different kids during that week, and that was one of the coolest experience ever. And there was one who stuck out, and I share with, with you a little about this too. And so for me in life, I'm sure this has happened to everybody here in different capacities, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or friends talking to you, or you just hear it through the grapevine. There's a story every now and again that you might hear, and it just hits home. It makes a lasting impact on your life, and it could shift a perspective you have forever. Tatiana's story was one of those for me. Maybe it was the environment I was in, maybe it was everything that was going on at the same time. um, but I've learned in moments like that, you can choose to take action. You don't have to sit in the sidelines in life. You can live your life with intention and know that God has a plan, and there was a reason why I was there that week. I'll share with you guys too. So during the trip, um, I saw that you could tell from the way that she was acting at school and the way that she was starting to kind of break through during the week from interacting and having conversations. She was starting to be a little more engaged, and so you could tell that she was on the fence of going one way or the other in her life. And so for me, I just had a strong call to just at least reach out and be a potential light for her to hopefully, you know, shift her and move her and guide her in the right direction that I know she wants to go and her heart wants to go. And then after I kind of had made that decision and talked to my wife about it, we both agreed. I had talked about it before going. I said I was kind of scrolling through and saying, "Hey, like it'd be great if we, partner with a child and sponsor a child." And she's like, "Well, go down and if your heart calls you to connect with a certain child, then you'll know." And that was happening throughout the whole week. And the day after we decided to do that, and we, was able to tell our leader and tell Lucy that this is something that we were doing. Um, it felt so amazing. And then we heard the next day a little more about her story. Lucy told me a little bit of background about what she's going through, and that she's been struggling and has actually attempted to take her life 2 times already. And here's a girl who's 11. And so for us, it was like an affirmation that this was exactly what we needed to do, and we need to be a part of her life. And she had, Lucy, the leader of the organization, or former Vita, had mentioned, she'd been somebody who hasn't been sponsored for this whole program for a long time, and nobody's really, picked her up. And so it was just, for us, we were all in, like whatever we can do to be a factor in helping her life. It was what we wanted to do. And so, as I'm sure you can imagine, when I got back from that trip, this was an interview we did a few weeks later. And the day after, a couple days after, I was just broken. Um, and at the same point, feeling like everything just made so much sense. And it's weird to feel like you are being broken and rebuilt all at the same time, but that's exactly what was happening. And I just took time to reflect, and I had to unravel everything that had just occurred, and it was quite challenging to share that type of experience over the course of 8 days, and what you've had as realizations in your life in that same period to your wife, who was home. And so we had dinner the night that we got back from the trip, and just that entire dinner, I was just like a wreck, fighting to get through for words. So it was pretty special. And at the same time, I had to switch gears. I'm now home, and we are less than 2 or 3, 2 months away from this next phase of our life, which was just an absolute blessing to come home to. And um, what I realized during that trip and during the months afterwards that unfolded was those years leading up were all preparation for what was to come. Becoming a dad, becoming um, having a whole new role that I was going to embark in that I didn't even know. And what I found was, and it is true for you too, that God is equipping you for his purpose. We might have these ideas of what we think our life's going to be, but if you actually seek a little bit deeper, I'm going to drive, and I have some questions coming up here in a second. If you drive a little deeper, you might see that what you're feeling actually and what your heart has been guiding you and pushing you and nudging you, but maybe you haven't been even resisting. That's actually where he might want you to go. And so this little guy gets to work with me every single day at our home office doing consulting work, in our team office doing amazing work for other kids around the world. He gets to grow up into this really, really cool environment where he gets to listen to our founder who's bilingual. So hopefully it's going to spin off to Noah as well. Maybe he'll know 2 or 3 languages. We'll see. I hope he does. But that time and looking and having that snapshot just fly through my brain when I was in Colombia, it just put all of those pieces, almost 20 years of my life, it just like snapped through. And I don't know if you guys have had those moments. I'm sure you have, when something impactful happens in your life and you just like, you see everything. You're like, wow, this is what happened. This is why I'm here. And so basically what happened in 2019, that life-changing moment, it re-brought everything back to focus. And that following year, 2020, I ended up leaving what was still, I was still holding on to a part-time career. I left that job entirely, just solely stepped into running my own business and 100%. And at the same time said yes to committing and transforming and moving towards fully supporting a nonprofit that I had no idea that I'd ever be embarking on in my life. That was not part of my vision, for sure. And so I want to take some time and engage with you all as well, who have taken time to, at this point, hang out for a half hour with us and hear this story. And I want to ask you guys a few questions, and these are questions that I was able to ask myself during this time too, and that have helped me. And so the first one, as you're taking notes, and whether you want to share it in the comments, we'd love to see that. If you want to share with us on Zoom, I'll ask you towards the end of here in a second. But take some notes, jot this down. If you're on a computer, pop it in your computer. What have you been doing over the years that may have been preparation for an area for you to serve or give? Whether it's your current career, whether it's something outside of that, whether you're being a stay-at-home mom, whatever it may be, what do you think that thing might be? And screenshot this, and certainly take some time after this to dive deeper. What is something that you've always wanted to do? What has held you back from doing that thing? I actually don't think it's going to take you a long time to answer that particular question. I think when you have something that you know you've always wanted to do, it's pretty quick that you know what's been holding you back. And I want to challenge you to consider pushing through that this year, and maybe even sooner. What is one thing that you can do today, this week, or this month that'll get you closer to that thing that you've always wanted to do? So if you followed me along so far for those 4 questions, and if you maybe have an answer to one of those questions, I'd love to open this up on Zoom. Shae, if there's any comments on Facebook, either way, I'd love to open it up for a second here and see if somebody wants to share one of those answers. If it could be what was holding you back, or it could be something you want to be doing that you haven't done.
Well, I'd love to share.
Please.
Because I love these rich conversations. I mean, the thing that came up for me the most is I got in my way. um,
Mhm.
I was in belief in myself and my abilities because I did have this collection of skills. And it's
Yes.
so interesting over the last 5 years, similar to you, as I've built my business, all these things that seem completely not related have built this house in which I can reside. um, and I also, again, the synergy from some of the other conversations that we've had the last 2 days is all about the self-work and how when we work on ourselves, it ripples out into the world. And the other
Mhm.
piece is last year was about transformation. You're getting these great ideas, you're transforming, but the astrologist that we just talked to, she's talking about this year is about initiation. So going
Mhm.
from these great ideas into something tangible. And yeah, so I just love that synergy. We're moving into this big phase of things being initiated and coming to life and fruition.
It's so great, and I feel entirely the same way. This year is poised for action. I completely agree. Anybody else like to share one of those thoughts? If not, no worries at all. All right, cool. So let's jump in. I have a few more thoughts, and then I have some tools and resources also to provide you guys with to walk away with some ideas here. One thought I wanted to share with you that I've learned along the way here of my own spiritual journey is, if you look at this visual, hopefully you'll never forget it in terms of looking at it the same way again. Be a river, not a reservoir. And the big difference that I've learned along the way is that when you're creating and doing things and it's all for self and you're just doing things for yourself, whether it's career, I always looked at a job for me and the way I was operating it. I just wanted to do it. And it's so contained. I'm supporting my household and I'm doing stuff for me and I'm living this kind of individual life. When you look at what's the difference for a river, when you're receiving blessings, whether it's you have assets or you're having income as a business owner or as an employee, and you're bringing them through, or you have skills that you have knowledge that you're learning, it's so much more powerful and greater and has greater good if you flow it through you to others. Meaning, if you have resources and goods, to have it stockpiled up for yourself for a rainy day is less powerful than you sharing it through your veins, like this wonderful image shows, like John Maxwell talks about, the opportunity to do more with the resources we have to give to others. When we receive, you'll actually get even more back along that process too. So this is just a great image to look at and consider. And so I want to challenge you, if you are right now feeling like you're a reservoir, I would say open the floodgates. This is that year that maybe you've been building up towards, you've been stockpiling, you feel like you're safe, you're content, you know where you are, you feel like you're in a good place. I would challenge you to open those gates and let the floods out. Start giving, whether it's time, a couple hours, maybe that's all you have, resources, maybe you have some great blessings over the years from your businesses and things or whatever you may be doing. Could be experience. Maybe you have lots of knowledge to share and you're just ready to pour into somebody and give them guidance, input, or support.
And one other thing, Greg, I just want to say real quick before you leave that slide, is if you look at law of attraction, this aspect of tithing, and the more you give, the more you get. Not that we give to get, but there's this reciprocal nature to that, even if it's $5 or $10. So I love that you brought that up. And it doesn't always have to be money. It can be time, donations of food. Yeah.
Yes, it goes a long way. It sure does. And so I'm going to share with you, you can start where you are. It doesn't have to be this grand gesture, this big thing, this world changing idea. Believe it or not, even if a small thing of an idea where you are could actually stem into something quite large. But start where you are. Take notes what's around you, what's missing around you, what challenges are in your community, what needs are there. Talk to some people who are movers and shakers around you. Are there organizations already active in doing things in your community? You can get engaged and do something right in your backyard. So a few tools for researching some of that may seem quite obvious, but uh, I'll give you a few other specific ones for our community. Up here, but Volunteer Match is a place where you can look for organizations that are seeking volunteer needs. Um, your local news stations and news areas may actually have, in this case in New Hampshire, we do have a resource for the directory of all the nonprofits right here in New Hampshire. So if you have a certain desire and idea, you can look up and find that nonprofit that you want to serve. And just as easily, if there's a specific thing that you really like, Google is a great place to start. You can find an organization near you, or Facebook with Facebook groups and community pages. You can engage with others and ask them what are places you can serve, where are places that need support. And I will encourage you to start with your one thing. What's that one thing that, or in Shae's case, what are the 5 things that you're good at that she mentioned, right? What are those multi skills? What's that one thing possibly? We all have unique skills, talents, callings. Maybe you're a great at baking. There's a person on our community page actually right here in town that she was just, with being quarantined, and she's like, I just need to bake. And she's just baking things and just offering them for free in a cooler at the end of her driveway. Anybody can take baked goods. She's just baking things. You can organize people well. Maybe that's one of your skills. Do you write well? Are you bilingual? And to be honest, it's kind of cheating. That's actually 2 things if you're bilingual. But what are those things that you might have as skills that you don't think of as tools for serving, but honestly, they most certainly could be? 2 tools that I found along my path, actually, that Jill, the trip leader who inspired us to go on the trip, we did while we were down there in a couple of the bus rides that we had going back and forth to some of the different programs, was taking a spiritual gift survey or even a personality or skills assessment, one of those 2 things, or both, like we did. But a spiritual gift survey will kind of bring out some of the talents and skills that maybe you haven't really thought about that you actually do, but it'll actually put it on paper in front of you to look at and understand what are some of the possible places and occupations that serve you best based off of your skill set. So these 2 places, again, feel free to screenshot this slide too, to give you an idea. I ended up on the Myers-Briggs assessment for skills, ESFP. And if you want to read that, you can read that down there too. Flexible and spontaneous, adapt readily to new people and environments. Learn best by trying a new skill with other people. So it's great. It kind of breaks down what your personality is like and what skills and things you may be great at sharing. Start small. Although over time, maybe your commitment might get larger. I would say, our biggest setback a lot of times is we want to do this big thing and we think about it and we kind of do nothing because we know it's going to take a lot of time. If there's one small thing you can do, Zig Ziglar says it pretty well. He says, if you will first help others get what they want, they'll help you get what you want. You can just do one small thing and possibly help somebody out this week, and that might get you closer to that goal. Some examples of some organizations, some places you can go serve at, some things that businesses are doing to give back. We had an experience recently where I engaged with a company called Amazon. I'm sure you guys have heard of them. Amazon, actually, as big as they are, actually provide a lot of guidance, grants, assistance programs, free resources of technology to other businesses. You think of a huge billion-dollar company, they actually give a lot of things away too, in terms of giving back to others. And the firm that I worked for, just to give you guys some creative ideas if you're business owners and want to do some fun things, this particular design firm and many other in the Boston area do this thing called construction, where they take canned goods and they design these huge sculptures. Sometimes they're 10 feet tall or larger, and they do a competition to say who's got the best design. But at the end of the day, 100% of those cans get donated to local food banks. Such a cool, fun way to use your skill of design, but to give back in a fun, competitive way. Local soup kitchen could be always looking for extra set of hands. These are just ideas to engage you guys. And at the end of the day, what are you passionate about? Because I think being able to do something around your passion is so exciting, whether it's animals, children, the environment, culture related. There's so many places. I would just suggest at this point for 2021, as Shae's mentioned, this is a time of action, I believe. Just start somewhere this year. do something that makes a difference, something with people who want to make a difference at a time. I think there's no better time than today. And it's best when we can do it together. It's empowering to have friends around you, to have your support person next to you who want to do this. There's a wonderful saying, and I realized that it was actually an African saying that I didn't know. It goes back to that culture. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Um, I want to be one of those resources for you if you have places you're trying to go, or if you have something you're trying to pursue, be it philanthropy, serving, anything between. My email's on the screen here. Screenshot that if you like. Reach out to me with questions where you can serve, things you want to do in your life. I have a few support tools, some fun books that actually were, several of these were gifts to me from important people in my life along the journey. The Last Arrow, awesome book about just saving nothing for next life, investing it all in this life. Another great book called Intentional Living, having intention about your day, about your life, where you're trying to head, where you're trying to go. And another great book just to start listening to your heart, that bear that pokes you, as a mentor of mine might say. Book called Frequency, to tune in and hear that spiritual voice around you. And lastly, my last thoughts here will open up for any final questions and comments too. Sometimes later becomes never, and I hope you guys remember that, because this year has flown by, and if we were waiting for the next year or the following year to do things, and we let a whole year go by without doing anything, we could have done some great things this past year too if we made the decision to do so. So thank you for this and sticking with us during this presentation and jumping on and engaging. I'd love to open it up now, Shae, and for anybody who's got questions or comments in the chats, and talk with you guys too.
That was so wonderful. I love that quote. Sometimes later becomes never. It is so easy to say, oh, tomorrow or next week or next month.
So true.
That courage, having that courage. So we've had so many people on Facebook liking and popping in and popping out. So
that's great to hear. Wonderful. Well, thank you for this. This is a great opportunity to connect, and hopefully the message creates an impact for others. And
yeah, absolutely. And I put all of the links into the resources and to you and to Mission Life on the Facebook group. So yeah, I'm really excited to help spread the word about the work that you're doing. And I just loved hearing your story. I think it's so easy to resonate with somebody when you hear the story.
It was so interesting. As I finished the presentation, I had a thought that I feel like it's very common. We may not listen to it and pinpoint it. I think there's people that might just kind of ignore it and just kind of keep going on with their life. But for those who do pinpoint it, I think many of us do, who are intentional with their life, like you mentioned, Shae, for yours too. Mm-hmm. You know, you hit that point, and I think we feel like there's success and we have to get after it, and there's a certain thing that we're striving for, and this is what my ideal life looked like, and when we get there we're like, wait, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. I don't get it. I thought I was meant to do this. And when you hit that moment like you did too, and say, wow, this is actually exactly why it looked so messy, because I needed to do all of these things to get to this point. It's such a wonderful place to sit in and look back, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know I keep bringing up the other topics that we've talked about, but even earlier today, we were talking about mindful self-compassion, and we were talking about self-compassion versus self-esteem, and how self-compassion is so much about the richness within us, being able to face these challenges, but still have courage and hope and faith, versus self-esteem, which is so evaluation based and comparison based. And I feel like we're making such a big shift in our community and our consciousness right now, from comparison to to us as individuals, and how we contribute to the community at large.
And I almost feel like that was one of the, if we can point many of them. I think this is one of those blessings, I think, from this period. There's many who've been struggling the past 12 months through this process, right, of being quarantined and being separated, and obviously a lot of the physical turmoil too for many who are suffering from this. But you know, those who are just trying to see, find the good in what's happening,
Mhm.
um, it can be challenging. But I think the self-reflection, this time without the noise, if people have taken the time to just turn some things off along this path, hopefully too, when they've been remotely at home, and
Mhm.
um, maybe their career or things have been kind of flipped upside down. I hope and I pray that for some, they've looked at that and taken the time to do a self-assessment, a checkup from the neck up, from what I've heard from somebody else too.
That's a good
and
point.
and just really actually search a little bit deeper and say, okay, what is this telling me? What else can I do? What's something that I really want to be doing in my life? And how can I take this time to really take a pause
Mhm.
and see the positive in it too? Because certainly there's been a lot of challenges, but I think this has been a time in everyone's life, a whole year, to just, if they took the time to just totally change their trajectory too, in a good way.
Yeah.
Uh, so
Absolutely. And that pause. I mean, I'm a the yoga therapist, yoga. So the pause, there's the movement and there's the stillness, and both are equally important, but it's how you be in the stillness that makes all the difference. So
so
yeah,
great.
this is wonderful.
This is great. Thank you, Shae.
Thank you so much for being here. And, of all the BNI groups in New Hampshire that I could have gone to, I ended up in yours. The synergy and the alignment is just crazy. So I'm just so thankful for you and your mission and the work that you're doing, and for sharing your story with